There's an equation running around nowadays that a university equals education. The supposition is that if you want a liberal, which means a liberating, education, college is the place to go after high school. Now, when it comes to the other kind of education, the technical education, where you need a paper degree to get into the legal monopoly, whether it's the medical monopoly or the academic monopoly, then I guess college is the only way you can do it. To get that paper degree from the right institution, that's your key. But for the liberal education, a lot of that is to tell, when have you gotten the real thing? When you look at University X and College Y, what are you supposed to look for if you want a liberating education? An education for the mind rather than just for the pocketbook. What's the key? Well, I believe that it lies in what you come in contact with in those classrooms. In the English class, for example, are you exposed to Homer, or are you exposed to a diary of a Guatemalan housewife, which is a text used in at least one university I know? In theatrical arts, is it Sir Laurence Olivier, or is it Sylvester Stallone? In your music classes, is it Richard Wagner, or is it Stevie Wonder? In biology, are you exposed to the drama that was behind the discovery of the DNA molecule? Or are they showing you the structure that's there with the little balls and sticks and say, here it is, memorize the 4 little molecules that fit up on the side of the ladder? The key is whether you were exposed to the very best in literature and art and music and science. The very best, continually exposed to it. It takes time. It takes years of exposure to the best, not weeks. Then your radio station preferences start to change. Then you may drop your subscription to U.S. News and World Report and substitute a subscription to Chronicles magazine. Your reading changes. Ian Fleming just isn't the same as Abraham Maslow. If your University X or your College Y doesn't offer you the best, there is a cheaper way to do it. There's a more direct path in coming in contact with the very best. It is permissible for you to read the very best without it having been assigned. It's permissible for you to see the best in art without having to do a term paper on it. It is called being an autodidact, one who instructs himself or herself. Jane Austen never went to college. Much of science today is merely ideology dressed up in a white lab smock. Recycle stuff. Recycle stuff. Recycle stuff. If you think about it, it only makes sense to recycle stuff if it's commercially viable. What if we all recycled everything we could recycle? We don't. Not even the greenest of those greenies in their absurd solutions does that. Why not? Why not recycle everything? Because it isn't worth it. Recycling too much is as silly as recycling too little. This is our science feature. Let us think for a moment about, say, saving trees by recycling paper. Save trees. Ponder that for a moment. Trees are living things. This is the science program. They are living. Do we save pigs and let them die of natural causes? That's silly. Unless they're our pets, but not the commercial pigs, not the ones we have caused to come alive. It's a real fact. Trees live and then they die. But we're going to run out of trees. We're going to run out of trees. Fact. The trees that we have in this country, the timber we have, the amount of it has been growing and growing and growing since the 1920s, 70 some odd years ago onwards. The timber supply we have in this country has been increasing and increasing substantially. I don't waste paper, but I don't value a tree more than a human being. If you do, then pass a law limiting the size of the type in the books that are printed in this country to telephone size type. We can save some paper.
Like my shirt? It's a yacht.
Economics! I'm driving down the road. And the radio's telling me, if I can believe the media, the recession is over. And so I'm a-humming, happy days are here again. Having a great time. I don't know why, but there's somebody standing beside the road I see nowadays with a big sign up there, and the sign says, "Will work for food." Maybe he hasn't heard the radio. Okay, I've got a place that I want to clean up so I can rent it. And I need some help. I need 4 hours of work. That's what I need. And that fella beside the road with his sign, he wants my $20, and he's willing to trade it for 4 hours of work in order to get my $20. This is economics. What might happen? The exchange would happen. I would give him $20, he would give me 4 hours of work. I would be happy, he would be happy. There'd be benefits to society. There'd be less government handouts for free. There'd be less crime because there'd be less incentive to steal and take and defraud than there was before. All the parties would be content. All right, that's what might happen. Here's what does happen. I start thinking, I have to legally get workers' compensation insurance before I hire him, even if it's for one afternoon, because if he falls and skins his knee or strains his back, he'll sue me. I've got to have it. Last time I tried to get workers' compensation, it was in California, and the companies that I phoned, many of them, would not give me workers' compensation unless I had a volume of business to give them, not just one worker. So you have to look for quite a while sometimes to get the right company who will do the insurance that you pay to those companies for the workers' compensation insurance. But then I got to figure out, okay, he'll do a little bit of painting for me. He'll do a little trash picking up for me, a little cleaning. And workers' compensation wants to know what his job classification is. If he's a painter, I have to pay so many dollars for every 100 I pay him. If he's a trash picker-upper, I pay a different rate. I got to figure that one out. Then, when I was in California and I issued checks as an employer, which I did at one point, I had to make 4 deductions from every paycheck with the federal income tax and the state income tax and Social Security and unemployment, and had to compute those things out. Even if I was paying the guys daily, which I often did because they were hungry, the ones I was hiring. Then I'd sit there at my desks and fill out the government forms. Counted them up once. In a year's time, I had 9, they felt like income tax-like forms to fill out. 4 for the state and 4 for the federals and 1 more for the, I've forgotten what it was at this time, the unemployment or whatever else. And FUTA, F-U-T-A, and FICA, F-I-C-A, and all of the unemployment stuff, and all of those hours of time would be mine to do if I picked up this fellow who had his "will work for food" sign. Then I had to send in my contributions as an employer to Social Security. Contributions? Look up the word in the dictionary. Contributions? I don't think I'm just contributing. As a contribution, it is required by law. Anybody know out there how many days this fellow has to work for me, the fellow who will work for food, before I got to worry about sick leave or health care or pensions or overtime? As a regular citizen, I don't have the foggiest idea. So I'd have to call somebody, and call those government officials if I didn't want to ring up prices and cost of my lawyer. How many government officials do I have to call to make sure that I'm in full compliance with all of the laws that are placed upon me as an employer? By that time, I look in my rearview mirror, and that person with his sign is a mile in back of me as I've passed him. And I think to myself, sorry, my potential friend, I want to. You want to engage in this transaction. Maybe someday we can get together and you'll be happy, I'll be happy. Maybe someday, if we lived in a land of liberty for all. To be well educated is to read. Sure, you can learn things by going to movies or plays or concerts or visiting art galleries, but to read, books can be such a joy. You talk to a carpenter, and that carpenter will say a good hammer is a joy. A well-appointed workshop is a pleasure to the one who likes to work with wood. To the cook, a well-appointed kitchen is a pleasure. Bread makers are fun. But we're not all carpenters, we're not all cooks. But we all are human beings. We live. And to live to our fullest potential, to see, to understand as much as possible of who we are. That's for each of us. To understand what are our duties, what are our rights, whose we are. To what purpose may we apply our lives? It is these kinds of questions that are the questions that the task of being well educated are often directed toward. That kind of understanding and such a liberating education is chiefly found in the tools for the mind, namely in the great texts. Like the workshop for the carpenter, or like the kitchen for the cook, it is our libraries for all of us. Our personal libraries and our libraries that we can go to others and borrow from. And its start can be as simple as a single book tucked in a pocket or purse. What do you want, Opus? You wake me up. You're hungry. You're always hungry. Look at that tummy. You. You know about the basic 4 food groups and the rest, don't you? You know, you learned that in school. You want what? A hamburger and a Coke is what he wants. Oh, Opus. You usually bring stuff to bed here. Oh, that's cold. You just got that out of the fridge. How about some celery instead? Instead of a hamburger and a Coke, how about a little celery, huh? Like that. See? That's what's best for you. Oh, hamburger and a Coke you want. I got to tell you a story. Suppose we were in England 400 years ago, before the Industrial Revolution. Oh, isn't that celery good? You know, we wouldn't be living on fancy stuff at all. The people were starving around there. Or suppose they dropped you and I, Opus, into the bush in Australia somewhere. The bush country, you and me. You're not good to eat. I wouldn't eat you. But, you know, we'd be awfully hungry, famished. Wouldn't take long. You know, most of our ancestors had to really scrounge around for food. You know, in the old days, if it was a choice between celery and a nice fat squirrel to eat, then they used to shoot squirrels. I guess they still do, I'm not sure. This country. A nice fat squirrel would keep us away from starvation. A lot better. Or fruit, we go gather fruit. And what do we learn? We learn that the sweet fruits are the ones that are ripe. And those are the best ones to eat. And we'd look for salt. Back in the old Roman days, the soldiers were often paid, did you know that, with salt. In fact, that's where we get the word salary. It's from the same word as the word salt. And that was hard to get. So, you want a hamburger and a Coke. Well, your ancestors are talking. Because a hamburger and a Coke contain the 4 basic food groups, which are saturated fat, and sugar, and salt, and caffeine. Do you think those are the 4 basic food groups? What kept your ancestors and my ancestors alive, the salt and the sugar and the fat, are precisely the things that may kill us. Well, wait a while, we'll get a hamburger and a Coke maybe in a while. Did you ever wonder
The television news announcer on the nightly news announces, say, the death of a well-known person. And he intones in his real smart way of saying it,
Mr. So-and-so died last night of a major heart attack. He was 51 years old.
So silly. Great use of the language. I wonder, do they ever report that he died of a minor heart attack?
Do you listen to the kind of conversations that go on in our American society today? Some people are talking about football, and some are talking about where they've traveled, and some are talking about what they saw on television. Leisure time activities are the central area of American conversation, talking about things that titillate the speaker. Did you see the catch that baseball player made on TV last night? Wasn't that something? The pleasantly agreeable conversation, our yakety yak, is too often arid, exhausted, and effete. It reminds us so much of first chapter in Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament. He wrote, futility, utter futility, says the speaker. Everything is futile. What does anyone profit from all his labor and toil here under the sun? All things are wearisome. What has happened will happen again, and what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. End quote. Harold Bloom has written, the ennui that struck this writer of Ecclesiastes can erode and defeat entire civilizations. And I believe it's doing it to ours today. What's part of being well educated is to learn to lead a vigorous, meaningful, satisfying life. Reading TV Guide or watching Howard Stern or going to the casino just doesn't do it. You are as empty afterwards as before, only just a little bit more tired. Sitting down on a bar stool and smoking a cigarette and having a couple of beers, and you're numbed out. Instead, think about playing some tennis, reading a book that stimulates your brain rather than some other gland in your body, or discussing with a friend a project that you're really excited about. These invigorate a life rather than numbing it. To be well educated is to learn how to live the days of your life.